What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today we are reacting to Mel Kiper Jr. and his latest 2023 NFL mock drafts. Hey, we're getting really close to the NFL drafts. These mocks are coming out left and right, and I'm going to react to as many as I possibly can before draft night, share some of my thoughts, player fits, all that sort of stuff. So let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who went too high, who falls too low, and what player to team fits do you like the most, and of course, who's your favorite team, and did you like the pick that Mel gave your squad? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit the like button if you do, and subscribe if you're new, and we are off and running. Carolina takes Bryce Young at 1. You will be seeing this at my upcoming mock this weekend, and it seems as though, with betting markets flipping to Bryce Young being the overwhelming favorite, seems as though this might be the direction that Carolina is heading. Maybe it's smoke. Who knows? I mean, when you control the draft, you also control the rhetoric and narrative out there, so maybe Carolina's playing mind games. But, I just did my best fits for every offense, and I very nearly put Bryce Young to Carolina. But since I was doing 3 rounds, I decided to cop out, basically. And then I talked about CJ Stroud in Houston, which hopefully we'll see that here in just a moment. But this would be the pick if it was me on the clock with Carolina. I know Young doesn't come with the prototypical size and is a very accurate passer, but maybe there CJ Stroud has a leg up on Young, but I think that's a marginal difference between the two. I don't think arm strength is too big of a difference between the two guys, despite one guy being 4 inches taller, right? Man, I just love Bryce Young's feel for the game, the ability to throw with anticipation, escape the pocket, make things happen off script, where we really only saw CJ Stroud do that for one game at Ohio State. And also, we've seen Bryce Young do it in 2 different environments at Alabama. 2 years ago, where they lose the national championship to Georgia, and Jamison Williams, John Mechie III, they both got hurt in the postseason run to the national championship, but he still had those guys and it was a pretty good team around him. This past year, man, it was Bryce Young. He was the reason, him and Will Anderson, and some other players in that defense, but it was Bryce Young for why they were in contention to even possibly sneak into the college football playoff and ultimately make it to the Sugar Bowl. And, he plays one of the best games of his season in that game. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's got that it factor. I think he's big in big games. I think he can elevate a squad around him or just amplify a great team around him. So I think he can do both. I think we've seen both from him during his time at Alabama. CJ Stroud is then indeed the pick to Houston. I don't think, even if Houston is all in on Bryce Young, I don't necessarily think they're losing by going CJ Stroud, but I do wonder if it opens up a door for a conversation about Anthony Richardson and his upside, or Will Levis or something like that. But if they do go Stroud, I mean, I kind of think he's the perfect fit. This is why he was my Texans, perfect fit in that video earlier this week. Because, assuming Bobby Slowick's bringing over the Kyle Shanahan offense, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo has had plenty of years where he puts up really good numbers, when he's healthy at least, where he's just playing within the offense, being an accurate passer. And I don't really even think Jimmy Garoppolo is all that fantastic of a processor, because he chucks one to a linebacker at least one a game, one pass a game where he does that, or he'll miss the safety standing right in front of his face. So I think Jimmy Garoppolo can be a good decision maker, and that's kind of what you think of, the guy who can run an offense. But even then, it's he still has one mulligan a game. I think CJ Stroud, with his accuracy and his elite level processing, man, you plug him into that Bobby Slowick, Shanahan-esque offense, you can do some cool stuff there. And also, that throw over the middle of the field, a lot of crossing routes, those slants that we've seen Ayuk run 1,000 times over the last 2 years. Would 5'10" Bryce Young get those passes batted down? It's hard to tell, but I feel a lot more confident that CJ Stroud could be able to deliver those throws and see less of them batted down at the line of scrimmage than Bryce Young. So I actually kind of think this might work out better for both sides. So I am loving that the betting market has kind of changed that way, because I do think that would be really, really good for both sides. But not to say that either one would be wrong for going the other way around. Anyways, trade here at 3. Tennessee moves up and they draft Anthony Richardson. And, I've made this argument about the Falcons and Desmond Ridder, but certainly the same is true here with the Titans. Whatever excited you, if you're the Titans, about Malik Willis, imagine getting bigger, faster, stronger, and honestly a better quarterback just straight up in Anthony Richardson. I mean, how could you not be intrigued by that? And, if Malik Willis, ultimately that becomes a burn 3rd-round pick, well, it's a 3rd-round pick. Sure, that could be someone else in your roster. It could be a starter for all we know. But you took a swing of the bat you looked for an answer, and you went for the highest upside guy, I think, in that 2020 class, him and Howell. That's why they were my QBs 1 and 2 last year. 2022 class. But if it doesn't work out at the third-round pick, it's not going to be what costs your franchise. Moving up to 3, and if this misses, then that's going to set you back a little bit. But if it works out, and you move on from Ryan Tannehill, free up even more salary cap space, and maybe you can make a few more moves before we get to the regular season, or even just free up money long-term for Tennessee. All right, now we're talking. And also, we've seen what Ryan Tannehill is. Teams are moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo because they've seen the ceiling and they know it's not good enough. We've seen the Raiders move on from Carr because they've seen what the ceiling is and it's not good enough. I think we've seen the ceiling with Ryan Tannehill and we know it's not a Super Bowl. Anthony Richardson's upside has Super Bowl potential. So I would love to see Tennessee make this type of move, whether it's moving all the way up to 3 and kind of leapfrogging Indianapolis, or if Richardson makes it to 5, working on a deal with Seattle, or maybe at 6 for Detroit. I would love to see the Titans make this type of aggressive move, and I'd be excited about them taking Will Levis too. Who Will Levis is indeed the next pick. I'd just love to see the Titans say, "Hey, we're going to reset." And we even saw this with the Sam Monson mock out earlier this week, where CJ Stroud falls a little bit. Titans take advantage of it. So I'd love to see Tennessee make that move, and let's really reset this roster. Colts take Will Levis. They sent their head coach, OC, QB coach, GM, assistant GM. All to his pro day. They were all in on Will Levis. So it does feel like they like him as a prospect, and this whole process, it's felt like he's kind of a Colt in the making. Maybe it's just the blue and white from Kentucky, but it does kind of feel like he's a Colt soon to be. And as much as people have talked about how Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen, that could be a perfect marriage. We just saw what Steichen did with Jalen Hurts. Let's not forget what Steichen did with Justin Herbert and see how maybe that could translate to a Will Levis, who I think those guys are much more closely aligned than Levis to Hurts. So I just think, as much as we're talking about AR and Jalen Hurts and how that offense can overlap, I think the same can be said about Herbert and Levis, with Shane Steichen kind of being that common ground. And I would love to see what Steichen could do with a guy who has a quick release, a big arm, mobility, played under 2 NFL OCs. One I think is drastically better than the other, but nonetheless, 2 former OCs at the NFL level, one who's back to being an NFL offensive coordinator. So I'd love to see what this would entail. And this is the opportunity for the Colts. Get this pick right, get the right quarterback. You're going toe-to-toe with Jacksonville for the coming decade. And in this mock draft, them and Tennessee for the next decade. So all of a sudden the AFC South kind of goes from this snooze fest of a division last year to, Anthony Richardson's there. The Colts took Will Levis. And there's Trevor Lawrence and the Jags up and coming. Okay, all right. And in Houston they added CJ Stroud. So literally we're talking about the AFC South here. Picks 2 through 4. All getting quarterbacks and then all playing catch up to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That would make for a really fun division to follow right there, and I'd be totally here for it as an NFL fan. Seahawks then take Jalen Carter, so it comes down to Carter or Anderson. My personal rankings, once I put out my updated big board, I have Carter just ahead of Will Anderson, focusing solely on the on-field stuff. That's, I don't get to interview him. So I don't have as much information from the player side and the personality side that other squads do. So I'm going off what I have at my disposal. I have Carter by a hair over Anderson. I think Seahawks fans would prefer Anderson. And honestly, I think I might too, just because I think you bring in Draymond Jones, okay, you've addressed that area some. And then I think if you can land a Mozzie Smith, Keanu Benton, maybe a Brian Brzee even at 20, I think you can find that D-tackle, that Al Woods replacement, or if it's Brian Brzee, maybe that's just a Jaron Reed upgrade. And then if you took Anderson here, you could have Anderson and Brzee, or Anderson and then Mozzie in the second round, or Anderson here and Keanu Benton to play that nose spot, and you could take him at 37. So I think there's some other ways they could manipulate the board. I think taking their second round pick into account is fair here, and I do think this is a 2-round mock here for Mel, so I'll pick up the pace here because I'm slowing down and not keeping up the tempo that I need to, but nevertheless, I'd be interested to see what he does there at 37. And then at 6, this was kind of a no-brainer. Then the Lions get Will Anderson, and a year after they have Aiden Hutchinson fall into their lap, Will Anderson could fall into their lap. That's very interesting, and that could create an insane edge duo. And then James Houston becomes this, really nice story, and he gets relegated to a DPR role, which you say relegated and it comes with a negative connotation, but it might be a good thing given the fact he's 6'1", 240, and he could focus on solely being a pass rusher. So this would be great. I'd almost prefer to see this flip, though. Anderson goes 5. I think that's, it allows Seattle to address the one position we haven't seen them look at or add to yet this offseason. And then for the Lions, Jalen Carter would be the perfect 3-4 DN to slide in between Ali McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson. So not that either pick is wrong, but I'd almost prefer to see him flip the other way around. Raiders take Devin Witherspoon. Yeah, I really like this pick, whether it's him or Christian Gonzalez. You're getting scheme versatile guys. Witherspoon comes with a floor, so I don't hate it from the standpoint the Raiders have to keep up with the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Broncos, who we assume are going to be better this year. That means, better Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and then Justin Herbert. So that's a lot to handle, and that's not even including the wide receivers that make up the division, right? So adding the NFL-ready guy who can play man press, but I think is totally a weapon in zone coverage as well, that makes me feel a whole lot better about that secondary and that defense then as a whole. And I think he can keep up again with what Patrick Graham's going to do, mixing up their coverages. Falcons take Nolan Smith. So quick aside, I actually have a bet with the PFF NFL pod that Nolan Smith's going to go before Tyree Wilson. And so I have a vested interest in something like this happening. And I do think if it's going to happen, it's Nolan Smith being the pick to Atlanta and Wilson kind of lingering on the board. But that being said, after hearing the Chris Sims, edge rankings, and he's like, Tyree Wilson, guaranteed, first edge, count on it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm shaking my boots a little bit here, but we'll see. It's all in good fun. But nevertheless, I can totally see where Atlanta's like, yeah, we'll take the guy who runs sub 4.4, didn't really have the alignment to pin his ears back and go one-on-one with tackles versus the guy who waited until his fifth year to break out. Tyree Wilson comes with a lot of upside, and there's a lot of tools in the toolbox there, but I think Nolan Smith comes with a whole lot as well. So 235-ish pounds. Maybe it's a little light to pair up with Arnold Ebiketie, but I can see where he puts on 10 pounds, of weight, kind of like Micah Parsons did, and kind of like throughout the course of his career, Arden Key has done the same thing and kind of gone from a bust to becoming a guy who's getting multi-year contracts from, the Tennessee Titans. So I could see Nolan Smith bulking up 8 to 10 pounds before we get to week one. And then, throughout the course of his rookie contract, maybe that becomes 10 pounds of muscle turning into 15. And that's probably where I'd stop, but maybe even 20 pounds of muscle throughout a 4 to 5 year period. So would love to see that. And even without that, 245-ish pound mark, he stops to run at such a high level. And he did it, again, playing on the inside shoulder of tackles. I'd love to see what he can do as a pass rusher on the other side, attacking the outside shoulder of tackles, because again, sub 4.4 speed, great get off. He's an all-around athlete. The vertical jump's crazy. The broad jump numbers are awesome. He's explosive. He's not just fast. He's explosive with it. So I'd love to see him use that speed rusher. And him and Arnold Ebiketie could be, kind of an edge duo that gives a lot of offensive lines, especially guys with, teams with more bulky, heavy sets, less fleet of foot, offensive tackles. They could give them a lot of issues there. Bears take Darnell Wright. So first offensive lineman for that matter, off the board is Darnell Wright. And I almost reacted to the Mike Renner mock, and he did the same thing here. Darnell Wright, first tackle off the board to the Chicago Bears. And it's really interesting to think about because you draft Peter Skoronski, you're flipping him to the right side. If you draft Paris Johnson Jr., he or Braxton Jones is flipping over the right side. You draft Darnell Wright, and it's kind of you're ready to go. He's going to be your right tackle, and Braxton Jones is going to stay on the left side. So it kind of eases that potential issue that might come after you had to flip someone to one side of the line that they didn't play last year. But that being said, I'd still go with Paris here. But Darnell Wright's interesting, 6'6", 315 pounds, one of the strongest tackles in this class. But I've also seen where some people have said, dude, he can play inside at guard as long as you don't think 6'6" is too big, because he is a good athlete and he's good on the move and he has good feet. So when you put all that together, it sounds like I'm describing a guy who should be the first tackle off the board. And I mean, he's got a lot of those intangibles and he checks a lot of boxes. My kind of main hesitation is how much does that Josh Heupel offense keep him clean? I remember when the Cardinals hired Cliff Kingsbury, and all of a sudden that offensive line goes from putrid, and they made some team investments, right? They found some offensive linemen that could fix that issue, but they go air raid, and naturally that plus Kyler Murray and how you have to rush against Kyler, that offensive line all of a sudden looks a whole lot better. So I wonder how much that Josh Heupel offense kept Darnell Wright clean. Now that being said, I think the same could be true here in this wide zone scheme. I think again Wright's movement skills make him a good fit, but it's Justin Fields. People are going to rush contain against Fields. So Darnell Wright is going to have more time for his strength to come into play because, edge rushers can't rush Fields the same. So it's buying Wright more time to get his hands on you and, set up that block. So I think this fit could make a lot of sense. And, it's amazing how hot of a name Darnell Wright has been of late. Eagles take Peter Skoronski. I think this becomes a plug-and-play starter there at right guard. Again, probably the best moving tackle in this offensive line group. And for Philadelphia and their blocking scheme, that becomes a really awesome fit. You then just use Cam Jurgens as a backup swing into your offensive lineman. And then he's going to become your starter in a year's time for Jason Kelsey. That that would be my preference. I'd rather see that than Cam Jurgens at right guard. I scouted him as center only, and I kind of maintain that belief, even though he's gained a little bit of weight. But yeah, Peter Skoronski, I think NFL ready. You're getting a NFL ready pass protector, and again, one of the best moving, maybe the best moving offensive lineman in this class. So, for the run game side of it, getting to the second level, he's an awesome fit. And then, furthermore, long term, in a year or two's time, whenever Lane Johnson hangs it up, Peter Skoronski just slides over one spot, is your right tackle of the future, does a whole lot of the same stuff Lane Johnson does, just maybe without the arm length, of course. And then you're just readdressing into your offensive line in another offseason, and maybe a year or 2 years down the line whenever Johnson hangs it up. So I think this wins now, but it's also a win long term for Philadelphia. Then at 11, Cardinals do draft Tyree Wilson. So again, we'll have to see how that bet plays out. But Tyree Wilson, I mean, it comes down to what you see. I hear Sims talk about his explosiveness and his get off and his bend. I'm like, I don't doubt that you saw it, but it's just not something that I saw. I saw 6'6", 270 to 275, 280 for fluctuating numbers on his weight there, and we haven't seen him work out yet too. That's a bit of a concern. What's that 40? What's that broad jump, vertical? Apparently he is going to do that, but once I have those athletic numbers and testing numbers, maybe I'll change my tune a little bit here. I still think Tyree Wilson should be a top 10 pick. This is not me like dog on the guy, but I could see where until we get those athletic, testing numbers, he falls down boards a little bit, and he's 6'6", and he's heavy. He's a big guy, and he's got the 86-inch, wingspan. I get all that, and that's definitely why I think he should be top 10, top 12, somewhere around that range. Very unique build, but he is definitely raw when it comes to how he uses his hands, and it's someone who's still new to kind of football in the grand scheme of things. Not like he's been playing since he was 5 or anything. So I'm hoping at the NFL level we kind of see, with good coaching or, a veteran on the roster kind of coaching him up, he figures out the hand placement, adds a couple moves, and then we really see the potential here. But, that's something he still needs to add to his game. Should be coachable, but he still needs to add it nonetheless. So I don't doubt that he could maybe fall just a little bit, because maybe he's kind of the media darling this year, kind of like Jermaine Johnson. And yeah, he's got a lot of trades, but not necessarily perfect when it comes to being NFL ready. But I don't know. At the same time, I say, 6'6", let's just call him 280 pounds, with an 86-inch wingspan, man, that is rare. And to see the production kind of finally follow suit, even if it was in year 5, for him to be able to win with power, win with those arms, it's special. And I also think you're getting a really good run defender pretty much right away, projecting a large part there with his body and his frame. So, I could see this going either way. But for the Cardinals to trade down from 3 to 11 and still get Tyree Wilson, if this were to play out on draft night, that would be an absolute win for the Cardinals. Texans then take Jackson Smith and Jigba. And if you think Robert Woods can play on the outside, I'm absolutely here for this pick now. I was kind of thinking, post-injury, it's probably best that Robert Woods plays on the inside. Kind of like what I've been saying about Adam Thielen. And that might be the case, but I'm not the one seeing Robert Woods work out, right? Like, he's not the one signing a contract with my squad, right? So maybe he does have enough juice to play on the outside. And if so, him, Collins, and then JSN as the high-volume number 1 target getter out of the slot, I think that offense could work. And of course, you pair him up with CJ Stroud. That would be an awesome storyline, and obviously those two have a ton of chemistry, and I think that could be kind of the face of the offense moving forward for Houston. So I know a lot of Texans fans don't love when they see at least when they comment on my videos, they don't like seeing wide receiver at 12. I think with Stroud, JSN, this could be a first round that even if you don't love it necessarily wide receiver at 12, I think this one that could sway you to being a little bit more open about it. Jets take Broderick Jones. I think this fit makes a ton of sense, whether it's gonna be left tackle, right tackle, and whatever happens with Mekhi Becton as well as Dwayne Brown. This gives you at least one long-term starter at the tackle spot. I think he's got the movement skills to fit into that zone blocking scheme that Nathaniel Hackett wants to run, and obviously comes with NFL size and NFL strength. So he checks a lot of those boxes. Only a 1-year starter, and he's a little raw in pass protection, but again, nothing that time can't fix and some coaching can't solve. So yeah, I would love this type of pick. And how many of these mocks have we reacted to where the Jets take offensive tackle? It's a lot. Christian Gonzalez falls a little bit, and he goes all the way down to 14. This would be a really, really fun addition to that New England secondary. Guy who comes with the size and the athleticism to be, man press corner, but also because of that athleticism and how fluid he moves across the field, cover 3, cover 4, cover 2 even, cover 6. I think he could play any zone coverage. He could play man press, he could play off. So I think this is giving Bill Belichick for lack of a better phrase, kind of a blank check when it comes to the cornerback room. And whatever team they're playing that week, whether that team struggles with zone or if they really have a hard time against man press, I think Christian Gonzalez kind of enables you to have that number one corner that is kind of perfectly suited for that defense. And we've seen Bill Belichick kind of fluctuate to more zone defenses over the last couple of seasons versus the man press of old. But I'd love to see how much those numbers change, or is it a continuation of that trend of becoming a zone-heavy team with Christian Gonzalez? But nevertheless, this would be really, really fun to watch type of addition for the New England Patriots, and I definitely think they can get better at corner, and I wonder how special that defense could be if Bill Belichick got that clear number one shutdown corner, because New England's had a lot of good defenses over the years, so whatever if they don't, but when they had, Revis, and when they had, Ty Law way back when they had that number one shutdown guy, when they had Stephon Gilmore, that's when this team was insane on that side of the ball. So I'd love to see if Christian Gonzalez could be that type of guy for Bill Belichick all over again. Packers take Dalton Kincaid. Yeah, I've said plenty of times, I don't think they go pass catcher. Now, granted, I'm going to be talking out of both sides of my mouth when it comes out to this weekend. A little bit of a spoiler there. Don't want to give away too much, but wanted to change it up, having gone offense in a while. So again, we'll talk about that this upcoming weekend. Hopefully you join us for that mock. But Kincaid honestly, it's kind of wild. As much as I don't think that this will be the pick round one, this might be the single most mocked player to team destination I've reacted to here on this channel. So don't count it out. And he's certainly a big time upgrade over, Robert Tonyan and Mercedes Lewis that they've had in years past. And Joseph Seguara is the only guy on the roster right now. So Kincaid's definitely an upgrade there. And I think I don't know if necessarily call him the number one option is totally fair, because there's not a whole lot of teams that do that. And it's kind of like Kansas City, Travis Kelce. That's kind of the exception to the rule, right? But, I could see where Kincaid maybe pushes to be that number one target guy even year one. And then Christian Watson becomes kind of maybe that number one wide receiver, but him and Kincaid are the two guys leading the way in the offense, and then Dobbs is kind of relegated to that third fiddle. And I wonder how much more balance that brings to this offense. And I think Kincaid definitely comes with the highest ceiling when it comes to his pass catching ability. Awesome athlete, great with the ball in his hands, really hard to bring down after the catch, and can run a lot of different routes. And I think you can do a whole lot with him working over the middle of the field. So then again, Watson kind of being the big play threat, whether it's on a drag and he takes it 80 yards to the house, or if it's him being a deep threat. Then you have Romeo Dobbs, who works the intermediate parts as a really crisp route runner, just got to clean up the drops. But, if Dobbs cleans up the drops and Kincaid hits year one, this becomes a really fun pass-catching core around Jordan Love in Green Bay. Next, the Commanders take Joey Porter Jr. This makes a whole lot of sense. Washington could use a number one corner, and I think Porter has the size, good athleticism. Wish I knew that three cone, but other than that, the numbers that we do have, he's special from an athletic standpoint. 34-inch arms also goes a long way. I definitely think he's a great man press, cover 2-4-6 guy, but I don't think he can't be special in cover 3 either. Again, with those long arms, just get his hands into that receiving pocket, break up a lot of passes, and just given that size and then a 4.45 40 with it, I don't think that he's out of place in a cover 3 heavy defense like Jack Del Rio. So maybe it's a little bit of a projection just because we don't necessarily know. The only thing I think that could hold him back is because this guy can't steer or turn his body, which, again, it would have been nice to have that 3 cone marks just so we know what that change of direction skill is looking like. But even without it, man, there's a lot to like about Joey Porter Jr., and that's why he was in my tier 1 for cornerbacks. Then Zay Flowers to the Steelers. If memory serves, this is the first time we've reacted and graded a mock where the Steelers have gone wide receiver round 1. This is very interesting. You could play him in the slot, keep Deontay Johnson and George Pickens on the outside. Also, only 1 year left on the Deontay Johnson extension, if my memory is holding right. And then Zay Flowers, inside-out flexibility. You play him on the inside, though, becomes this awesome gadget weapon who, like Christian Gonzalez, just glides around the field. Plenty of speed to work deep down the field. He's a little short, but he's well built. I think he has enough weight. He's kind of like a fire hydrant in that standpoint, where it's like, he's short, but don't overlook him, and don't think that he's not strong, right? And because of that, I don't think that he's totally out of place when it comes to contested catches situations and dealing with corners that are, bump and run and whatnot. So This is interesting. It's not necessarily a direction I would go with Pittsburgh. I still think tackle and corner stand out as the most glaring needs. And if you're going to go wide receiver, maybe you wait a little bit. But I'm also interested in what Calvin Austin looks like in year two. Didn't get to see a whole lot of him last year. And I don't want to rule out that he could be that number 3 wide receiver. But this does future-proof the position and allow you to make the transition from Deontay Johnson onward a little easier. Lions take Bijan Robinson. Detroit fans, I know you guys are excited about this one. And I think the fit is awesome. I think you can move on from DeAndre Swift because of this. And, Swift's battled a ton of injuries as is. So even if you keep him around, 3-man running back rotation is not out of the realm of something we've seen at the NFL level. And that also comes down to how often is Swift even healthy, right? Which is something you have to take into account. But also receiving ability, the size works. 4.47 40 might not be something that you're writing to home about, but I think it's plenty fast. And also with that 40, it was kind of bobbing back and forth in the lane, so I think he could have even shaved off a little bit of that time. But wins with speed, power, elusiveness, and that receiving ability. I mean, he's the full package. And to me, it's like him and Saquon Barkley, best running back prospects since Adrian Peterson. And based on the day, I can kind of go back and forth on who I like more. Barkley had a little bit more weight, but I think, Robinson's receiving ability is a little bit more special than Barkley. So I can go back and forth. And behind that offensive line of Detroit, that would be scary. Paris Johnson Jr., my number 1 offensive tackle, falls quite a bit. And I think this is about as low as I've seen him go since probably like October, September of last year, if even then. But falls all the way to Tampa Bay. This would be a win of all wins. One of my favorite picks of the NFL draft, at least the first round. If it were to play out like this, you play him at left tackle, keep Tristan Wirfs at right tackle, and just make sure you pay the man, even if he is going to stay at right tackle. And that is a bookend tackle duo if I've ever seen one. And it's young, it's still got a lot of upside within it. Both guys move well. Both guys have plenty of strength. I said this a lot, a few months ago, and I haven't said it in a while. So to me, one of the things that most impresses me about Paris Johnson Jr., aside from 6'6", 315, great combine, really good footwork, and mirroring ability off the chart, I think he's NFL ready from a pass pro standpoint, while also being a good moving blocker and can get to the second level, and I think he's strong enough to be a high-end run blocker as well. But 2 years ago, he plays right guard, which is about as, almost as different as it gets from left tackle, and it's like, Ohio State saw this guy and said, well, he's one of our 5 best offensive linemen. We got to find a way to get him out there. That speaks volumes because this is one of the best rosters in college football year in and year out. So, if Ohio State's saying, we got to get that guy on the field. If I'm Tampa Bay here at 19, I'm saying I got to get that guy on the field. I got to get that guy on my roster. So I would love this pick here for the Buccaneers. Seahawks take Myles Murphy. High-end athlete. We saw that at his pro day, and it's good to see him get some love and maybe getting boosted up boards just a little bit. But I still think the 20s ultimately is kind of where he goes. He's a blank sheet basically from a pass rush standpoint, but I do think he is a good run defender. And I even think the pass rush tape is a little bit better. His true freshman season at Clemson and even in 2021 versus this past year. So you lose Brent Venables. How much of an impact did that make? That's hard to tell. But from the size and the athleticism standpoint, he's got it. I think he's a good run defender. And, Seattle could kind of sit here at 20 and say, well, we took Jalen Carter at 5. That fixes up the interior, pair him up with Draymond Jones. And at edge, we got Nwosu, we got Mafe, we got Darrell Taylor. Myles, we're not going to need you to do a whole lot this year because we have other guys who can contribute right away. And you buy Myles Murphy that buffer year, essentially, that redshirt year, where he can kind of work on his hand placement, figure out what the repertoire is going to be, and how to stack those, move off of one another, how to play chess with an offensive lineman. And then, if that were to play out, it's a big if, but if it did play out that way, then he becomes a force to be reckoned with going into year 2. Chargers draft Jordan Addison. I love this fit. He can immediately be someone who plays on the outside, gives you more speed than what they currently have on the roster, even if, 4.49 40 isn't what I thought he'd run. He's still faster and posted a better 40 time at the combine versus what Josh Palmer did, what Keenan Allen did, and it's the same 40 time that Mike Williams did, but Mike Williams ran a 4.49 at his pro day, so that's a little bit of an inflated number if you ask me. And then also, in a year's time, Keenan Allen I just can't see a world where he's still a Charger, right? Like $30+ million cap hit. They could rework it, they could extend it, they could do a whole lot with it, but I think for the long-term sake of the franchise, it makes a lot of sense to then move on from him. And then Jordan Addison can move inside to play the slot where, if he's 5'11", 170, maybe he is better off there. But he's a crisp route runner, can win deep down the field and over the intermediate parts of the field. Lower, less drops this year, right around the same drop percentage, but good to see the drops number itself go down this year. And, you take the USC guy and put him into LA, he's definitely going to be comfortable for whatever that's worth. But yeah, I would love that addition. I love that fit there in the Chargers offense. Ravens then take Deonte Banks. So, it's kind of amazing. You look at some of these picks in this mock and it's like, well, I don't love Zay Flowers going to Pittsburgh, and some of the other selections where I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe. I can't say no, I guess, and it's not impossible. But then, Mel goes back-to-back with absolute bangers. Jordan Addison and then Deonte Banks going to Baltimore. Love this fit as well. Man coverage upside all over Deonte Banks. Him plus Marlon Humphrey creates a really awesome outside corner duo, assuming Banks is a hit. But you look at his tape, this guy is already really sticky in coverage. Maryland plays a variety of coverages, so even if it's not man, I think he's, kind of at home. Low moving cost. Shout out to the NFL SE pod. This will make them happy. And he's got the size, he's got the weight, he's got the arm length as well, plus the 4.35 40. So I think he becomes a perfect fit into that Ravens defense. Vikings then take Emmanuel Forbes. Yeah, I'm kind of more of second round Emmanuel Forbes territory, but if he does go round one, you can't make up 17 PBUs. He's 6'1", does have solid arm length. 3-year starter in the SEC speaks volumes as well. And for Minnesota, I do think they could still stand to add at least one more corner to shore up that room and make sure whether it's him, or Caleb Evans, or Andrew Booth, 2 of those 3 guys can play. And then you also have Byron Murphy, of course. But right now, I'm kind of figuring him playing mostly in the slot. Maybe that'll change, but for the sake of that matter, Byron Murphy, Emmanuel Forbes, Booth, and Caleb Evans, those 4 guys, I feel confident that at least 3 of them, there is some order and some combination of 3 of those 4 that can create a solid cornerback room and starting lineup for Minnesota. Lucas Van Ness falls a bit, goes to Jacksonville. Would love to see them add yet another guy to that pass rush room. A little bit different than what they have compared to Josh Allen. Wins with power, kind of like a Trayvon Walker, but also maybe a little bit on the younger side, kind of like Walker, which would be fun. But inside-out versatility, and the big reason why he played on the inside at Iowa is just because they let their juniors and their senior, they let their upperclassmen get the starts on the outside, and Van Ness worked his way into the field any way he could. A lot of that was on the inside, and because of that, I wonder how much more there is to gain from him playing on the edge. I think he was a solid run defender on the inside. How much better is he on the edge? Or I feel like there's some untapped potential maybe there. Just by moving him out wide, and then you're kind of playing him in his true natural position. But great get off on the line of scrimmage, and he knows how to turn it into power, and that's the calling card of Lucas Van Ness. So adding him in with Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen, kind of a roundabout way of adding that third pass rusher that you lost with Arden Key going to Tennessee. So I don't hate that fit whatsoever. And plus we've seen mock where he goes in the top 10. So give him 24. I think that's good value. Giants take DJ Turner. High-end athlete, crazy 3-cone, but then also a 4.2 640. And he's kind of got that Devon Witherspoon, suddenness to him, where the guy's agility and acceleration are off the charts, and his mirroring ability are fantastic, making this guy feel like, despite being a little bit small, maybe a little light, fantastic man coverage specialist, high in athleticism to go with it, so you can feel confident he's not going to get beat over the top. Wink Martindale's going to blitz a lot, so that 4.2 640 and that makeup speed that DJ Turner plays with will come in handy just in case he does maybe get beat off the line against whoever he's playing against. But yeah, you give Dory Jackson that running mate on the outside, you give Wink Martindale that second corner he needs. The fit, kind of makes a whole lot of sense there for the Giants. Cowboys then take Michael Mayer. With Bijan off the board, it's Mayer, it's Pollard, maybe one of the linebackers that could be interesting. But Mayer, not a bad ad if you don't feel confident in Jake Ferguson or Peyton Hendershot. I think they trust those guys enough to where they'll go elsewhere here at 26. Even interior offensive line could be a little interesting. Cyrus Torrance is kind of calling my name at this moment. But not a bad ad whatsoever. May not be the highest end athlete. It may not have the most gaudy separation. But I think when you watch him yards after the catch wise, you see more wiggle than you do sometimes in his route running. And part of it's also like Notre Dame played him out wide. They played him in the slot. So sometimes he's not even getting manned up against like linebackers and safeties. So sometimes he's drawn the hardest assignments that any Notre Dame pass catcher gets. So even that point aside, even if he's not a great route runner, this guy might be the best contested catch machine in this draft, wide receiver or tight end. I don't doubt that. And if you make that argument, I will totally listen, and I can totally see where you're coming from. He is a machine, even with someone draped all over his back. This guy's coming down with the football. So to add that element, kind of like Jason Witten 2.0 for the Cowboys, man, that would be kind of a fun story and a fun fit. Trent Simpson then goes to the Bills. I'm starting to think that Jack Campbell's going to be the first linebacker off the board, and we've reacted to a few mocks where that's the case, and you may see that again this weekend. But if the Bills feel like they can go linebacker round one, Jack Campbell or Trenton Simpson to be that Tremaine Edmonds replacement, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it shores up the position a ton versus just having Matt Milano, and then we'll kind of figure out who that other guy with Milano is going to be. So don't hate if they use the first round pick on that whatsoever. That, or maybe the right interior offensive lineman, can make a whole lot of sense there for the Bills. And then at 28, Brian Brzee to the Bengals. I'm thinking maybe for the following mock in another week's time, another interior defensive lineman that I think would make for a really fun addition to the Cincinnati Bengals. So Brzee here, I kind of like that thinking. Upside play, 6'5", 300 plus pounds. They already have enough interior defensive linemen that can see the field, buy Brzee some time to grow as a pass rusher. But you are getting a pretty high-level run defender right off the bat in my books because of the athleticism and because of the frame and the arm length and whatnot. And then, like I said, you buy him some time to grow as a pass rusher. And then if that progression happens, him plus DJ Reader becomes an awesome interior duo. Reader, who's kind of this run-stopping focused D-tackle with a little bit of pass rush in his game. And then Brzee, if he grows as a pass rusher, I mean, with his athleticism, he could become a force there, absolute high end of his potential. But even if it's like middle of the road potential, that probably becomes his specialization and his focus with some run stopping, juice there to kind of get some flashes of as well for Cincy. So I kind of. It's not a position that I've targeted yet for the Bengals in any of my mocks, but I would love to see them go IDL, to be honest with you. Saints take Elijah Cansey. I think this one makes a ton of sense, especially if you feel comfortable with Sanders being the run-stopping D-tackle. Cansey then can focus in on being the pass rush guy. Plays with a lot of juice there, both with his hands and his explosiveness, his get off on the line of scrimmage. And I almost wonder, at 6 foot, 280, could this guy see a little bit of edge work? There I worry about the arm length a little bit more. Typically, we have those arm length benchmarks for tackles at 32 inches. Guards, the number's a little lower. So in the battle of, short arms, I feel a little bit better about Cansey on the inside versus long arm tackles on the edge. But nevertheless, speed talks, and he's a polished pass rusher when it comes to his move set and how he uses his hands, and maybe that's enough to overcome maybe having shorter arms and tackles. So I think the fit makes a ton of sense there from the interior side, but then also some upside for him maybe being someone they rotate on the edge. Seattle and a projected trade with Philadelphia. Here we go. And the Seahawks take Hendon Hooker. So very interested by this. So they end up going IDL, edge, and then QB. I talked about off top, maybe you could go Will Anderson and then Brzee at 20 or Mozzie Smith at 37. This trade kind of takes 37 out of play. And they get Hendon Hooker. So now Mel's coming around to the idea of Hooker being a first-round quarterback. And, we're hearing a whole lot of buzz around there and around that. And a ton of these mocks have Hooker going somewhere in the top 31. So maybe we end up seeing 5 QBs go off before we end round one. Wouldn't totally surprise me. But this would be an interesting... Would you draft a 25-year-old that probably won't start for 2 years? That timeline of it is a little interesting to me versus like the Raiders or maybe even the Rams if they think Stafford's only got 1 more year, or the Vikings where that's a 1-year deal. This comes down to how long they think Geno is going to be their option. And who knows? Like, as much as I don't want to say this, let's be honest with ourselves. Last year was the outlier of Geno Smith's career. So who's to say he doesn't backslide this year? I really hope that's not the case because I think Seattle's a really fun team with how good Geno was last year, and I think that made for one of the best stories in the NFL, and that's why he won Comeback Player of the Year. So I'm not saying he's going to backslide or get worse or anything like that, so Seahawks fans don't murder me, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities, right? Like, he could go back to kind of old school Geno, so then therefore having Hendon Hooker in the building might come in handy. So I'd just be curious about the timeline of this. That would be the most interesting thing here for me in Seattle with Hendon Hooker, and especially if you trade up into the first round. That being said, moving into the first round, you get the 5th-year option, so you'd have him from 25 to 30, which that is a little interesting. Then we get the Chiefs taking Will McDonald to conclude the first round portion of this mock draft. McDonald makes a ton of sense. Almost has as long arms as Tyree Wilson, which is crazy. And kind of like Van Ness, where this guy played so much on the inside, it's not that I think Van Ness is going to be a better run defender than McDonald, no doubt, but is there a little bit of upside, or at least we don't know what that run stopping ability for McDonald is if he's playing true edge versus 4-eye? I think that's something that, maybe you could bake into your equation. I'm not saying he's going to be a great run defender, but maybe he'll be better the NFL level versus playing on the inside like he did in college. But you're drafting this guy because he's 6'3", 240, great get off, long arms, and he's going to be a speed and bendy edge rusher. And to add him opposite of George Karlaftis and in a rotation with Charles Omenihu, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also with Karlaftis and Omenihu already there, if Will McDonald's not a good run defender, okay, then he's only going to be your DPR. And here's a little bit of a spoiler alert for next year. I don't have to read the NFL scripts to know this. The Chiefs are going to be good. They're going to put up a lot of points, and they're going to be leading a lot of games. So having that third pass rusher and that DPR specialist will be a vital role for that defense, and it adds a whole lot of juice to that Kansas City pass rush. All right, we're going to speed it up here on the second round. This video is already longer than I anticipated, but Steelers take Anton Harrison. You guys have been around the channel. Anton Harrison, my OT3, even ahead of a guy like Darnell Wright and Broderick Jones. I love me some Anton Harrison. Would love the Steelers getting him here at 32. One of the most polished pass protectors in the game, and I feel like that's the exact way to build a picket fence after you take a quarterback in the first round last year. And then the Texas take Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Love to see them add some edge, and especially a guy at 6'3", 255. Don't think he's undersized by any stretch. DeMeco Ryans come from San Francisco, where they build through the D-line. Can totally see this being a priority top of the second round after they go double offense in round one in this mock, and add that type of bend ability and maybe the potential to be a double-digit sack type of guy. Quentin Johnson makes it out of the first round. He goes to the Cardinals. This is a really interesting DeAndre Hopkins replacement because kind of plays with that size, but he is not nearly the intermediate contested catch possession threat that DeAndre Hopkins is. Instead, it'd be like a wide receiver trio of 6'3", right around 210 pounds, who's both a great satellite weapon and downfield threats, at least if he plays up to his potential, in Quentin Johnston. And then Hollywood Brown, who's kind of the same stuff, yards after the catch, over the top weapon. And then Rondale Moore, who, again, kind of the same thing. So it almost feels like adding Quentin Johnston would be great and give you three the same receiver, which would be awesome in a Cliff Kingsbury offense. I just wonder what it looks like now with a new offense installed there in Arizona. But I still like this fit a ton. And if you're losing D-Hop, it's not out of the question that they try to find that replacement early round two. Brian Branch evades round one. I think that would be an absolute travesty if it does happen on the 27th, but if he does make it to 35, the Colts have a really interesting decision here. And could they draft Brian Branch for a team that, in cover three heavy, with Gus Bradley, it's not the same as it was under Matt Eberflus, but when Eberflus is there or was there, their safeties were as big a part of their success on the defensive side of the ball as any other position, even as much as, Kenny Moore, DeForest Buckner, and Shaq or Darius Leonard, formerly known as Darius Leonard, Shaquille Leonard now. When it was Kari Willis and Blackman back there, I mean, that was an awesome 1-2 punch and a big part of why they were so good in that cover two heavy defense. Changed up since then, but Brian Branch is like a potential Kenny Moore replacement after he kind of had a bit of a down year. Very interesting. And then by moving on from Moore, you free up some more salary cap space. I'd be curious to see how this plays out. Also, Gus Bradley, everywhere he goes, his nickel corners always play well. And part of it's the defense and the role that they're asked. But Brian Branch, I don't think needs any help. But in that defense, he could have some insane production. All right, Rams then take Keon White. I'm I'm fading on Keon White. He was actually edge 10 for me as is. And I even said in that edge ranking video, if you missed it, definitely go back, check it out. Where I was like, I think mock drafts are different than my big board and my position rankings because, he's catching a lot of hype from the combine and the Senior Bowl, but I'm not really crazy about what I see on tape. And I think that's starting to be I think that is a reason why we're starting to see him fall back down mock draft boards, but not out of the realm of possibility. He goes 36 here. The Rams are kind of rebuilding and retooling that defense. So for them to draft someone who's 6'5", 280 plus and is a high-end athlete and has had a good, draft circuit, for lack of a better phrase, I could totally see where the Rams fall in love with this guy. They needed edge when they had Leonard Floyd, and now they don't have Floyd. So they certainly need to address that position at some point before the top 100 ends. Then the Eagles, after trading back, gets Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, I think this would be an awesome win for Philadelphia fans, and it's a good way for Howie Roseman to be like, well, I didn't draft a running back in the first round. I got him in round 2. Oh, and I got the extra draft capital from moving back 8 spots from 30 to 37. So, yeah, I think that could totally make sense. And I think that would be kind of a Howie Roseman roundabout way and of validating a running back within the top 50. And he would be an awesome addition to that offense. And you throw him in a rotation with Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell only like 2 more years on his rookie deal. Penny's a 1-year contract, if my memory serves. If not 1, then it's 2. So short-term, contracts in the backfield right now. Jahmyr Gibbs would come with 4 years worth of control and similar skill set to Kenneth Gainwell, but I don't think that's a bad thing in Philadelphia whatsoever. And they have always leaned in having a committee, even before Nick Sirianni. They have always rotated through 3 and even sometimes 4 guys. So, yeah, all those guys are going to get their touches. Raiders take O'Cyrus Torrance. I think he should go round 1, but not out of the realm of possibility that we don't get an interior offensive lineman somewhere there in the first round. Actually, I think one of the other mocks we reacted to earlier this week had the same thing kind of playing out. And for the Raiders, this would be an awesome addition there at right guard. That's where he played at Florida. You keep Dylan Parham at left guard. Andre James plays center, which I think you can get better there. But that point aside, then you move Jermaine Illuminor back to right tackle, where he played some pretty good football down the stretch last year. And it feels like okay, now this offensive line is set in stone, and it can be I'm not saying a strength, but it can at least be average to above average for the Raiders, which goes a long way for Josh McDaniels and his offense. Carolina then takes Drew Sanders. This would be an interesting ad. Him and Frankie Louvu, 2 high-end athletes, and Louvu kind of took a little bit to fully break out, but could the same be true about Drew Sanders, who still has work to do in regards to being a coverage player and a run stopper, but really good in the pass rush department, and again, has NFL size and athleticism. So a bit of a project, but this could become an impactful addition, and him and Frankie Louvu could create a really fun tandem there in the middle of that Panthers defense. Saints take Darnell Washington. Okay, yeah, I don't think I've had this mocked at any point, but don't rule it out. And then you could let Juwan Johnson kind of focus on being the pass catcher of the 2 tight ends. And then Washington becomes a 6th offensive lineman. And that offensive line's already pretty good. And Alvin Kamara is one of those guys who does not need help. But if you give him a 6th offensive lineman, man, I'd love to see the numbers he could put up. Plus the untapped potential, of course, of a 6'7", 265-pound tight end that runs 4.64. And we didn't really get to see what his receiving ability was at Georgia because Brock Bowers and also Stetson Bennett not really always throw into number 2 tight end. So really we don't know what Washington is in the receiving department, but we do know what he is as a blocker, and that is special. Cardinals take Mozzie Smith. This would be an awesome add to that defense and a great value here at 41 as we see Mozzie work up the board and kind of start garnering first-round hype. And, I mean, that Arizona interior defensive line after losing Zach Allen is looking rough as it gets. So to get this guy who can be an immediate upgrade in the run defense department but comes with high-end athleticism and therefore some sneaky pass rush upside, that's exciting. And if the pass rush upside doesn't come year 1, year 2, it's not like the Cardinals need to win right here, right now. This is a 1 to 2 year, probably 2 year retool, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. So you get Tyree Wilson on the edge, and then you throw Mozzie Smith there in the middle. That's fun. And then we get to the Jets at 42. They take Luke Musgrave and then just double down. Take Joe Tippmann at 43. So back-to-back Jets pick. Musgrave, with only this year and then 1 more year on both the contracts of Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzomah, who, by the way, both those contracts are very cuttable going into the 2024-25 season. And, Conklin's cap hits at like 9+, and Uzomah's at like 8 something, maybe high 7. So a lot of money to be saved there. So drafting a year in advance for an athletic tight end, don't hate that whatsoever. And then Joe Tippmann, if this team loses Connor McGovern, they need a center. So this makes a ton of sense there. Whether it's him, John Michael Schmitz, or Luke Weipler, I think all 3 kind of make a good fit for that offensive line. You go tackle in the first round, center here at 43, just solidifying and keeping that O-line in a good place before Aaron Rodgers gets there. Falcons then take Keely Ringo. Yeah, Keely Ringo, man, his 3-cone, that was not ideal. So obviously, this guy's laterally challenged, and I mean, he's going to go to the NFL, and he's just going to play more snaps than me, so I don't mean to be overly critical there because I'm laterally challenged as well. I'm not an NFL athlete, but he does run 4.36 at 6'2" and have long arms. So a lot of man press coverage upside, and the Falcons actually today, when I'm recording this, made the Jeff Okudah trade for a 5th rounder, and I'd still like to see Atlanta if they go edge or D-line of some sort in round 1. Go ahead and add a corner in 2nd round. Because then it's similar to what we talked about with the Vikings, where of these 4 guys, there should be some combination of 3 of them that makes a starting trio. And then for Atlanta, it's like, we know A.J. Terrell's awesome. We know that's a hit. And then it's Jeff Okudah, and then in this case, Keely Ringo. One of these two guys should be able to battle it out and become that number 2 starter for Atlanta. So you're kind of just guaranteeing yourself. There's no guarantees in this by any stretch, but you feel more confident, and it's closer to a guarantee, I guess, that one of those two guys can be the down in and down out starter opposite of Terrell, which would be a big add to that defense. Packers draft Byron Young. 6'2", 250. I wonder if that's the size, but I've also mocked Nolan Smith to Green Bay, so I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth again here. But freaky athleticism, 4.43 40, 98th percentile on the broad jump. Not the craziest productive guy, and I actually think the 2022 film is a little worse than 21, especially in the run defense department, and kind of the PFF grades bear that out as well. So you're kind of banking on this guy being a good enough athlete and being coachable to where he gets better at the NFL level. And if he is coachable, I mean, did you see what Green Bay did with Rashawn Gary and what he was coming out of Michigan versus what he is now? All right, yeah, I'd like to see them take a swing of the bat and take Byron Young. So ultimately, I think Green Bay is more likely to go edge than tight end versus tight end and edge like we have here in Mel's mock. But can't say you can't rule it out, and never say never. So yeah, and plus going pass catcher round 1 would be a good way to stick it to Rodgers, right? I'm sure Gutekunst would get some excitement out of that. Patriots draft tackle Matt Bergeron. I think this is a good way to make sure you have a starter long term, right? I don't think Trent Brown is going to be playing forever, and Riley Reif 1-year contract. So Bergeron, whether it's at left tackle or right tackle, plays with good strength, good run blocker, and then kind of just solid the rest of the way across the board. So I think he could be a starter right away. Or he could even sit, and you roll out with Reif and Brown, the veterans, and then if an injury pops up, then we get to see what Bergeron's all about. But you address a serious position of need right now, but also a long-term question mark I have for the Patriots in their roster. Commanders draft Blake Freeland. So yeah, I've had Freeland go in the second round, but I think the highest I've had him go was 51 to Miami. But could the Commanders add one more offensive lineman? I can't say that it's impossible. Charles Leno's getting up there in age. Maybe Andrew Wiley ultimately plays guard. And I would, feel almost better about him on the inside versus at tackle because I just know he's not all that great at tackle. So yeah, maybe this is another way of trying to fix up that offensive line, and maybe Wiley and Cosme or your tackle tandem for the next 3 years, and kind of fixes up the offensive line for the foreseeable future. I could see it. I don't know how much of a fit Blake Freeland is. I don't know if he necessarily plays with a ton of power. He's more of a just over 300 pound, smooth moving, athletic tackle versus what I think Ron Rivera is looking for, who's kind of a mover of people. And come to think of it, is DeJuan Jones off the board? I don't think he is, if my memory holds. I think DeJuan Jones, if they're going to go tackler, I think DeJuan Jones would be much more of a Ron Rivera type than Blake Freeland. But what do I know? Lions take Jack Campbell. Would love this. I'll hold that for, they'll come back this weekend and I'll talk more about it. But this would be a great fit. Awesome pairing with him and Malcolm Rodriguez. He kind of comes with the size, where Rodriguez comes with awesome athleticism. Campbell, not nearly as bad of an athlete as we thought. So big-time winner out of the combine. Sure tackler, great change of direction skills, can read, react, find the ball carrier, and then once he's got him in sights, consider him wrapped up. And I don't think he's as bad of a coverage liability as we once thought, but that's what Malcolm Rodriguez is for. So that becomes an awesome 1-2 punch. Steelers draft Julius Brents. They actually just had him in on a top 30 visit, so I think there is some mutual interest between the two sides. And I think Brents can play man, but if this were to be the pick at 49, you bring in a zone special at this point in his career in Patrick Peterson, and then you draft Julius Brents, who's 6'3", 6'6", 3 cone, 34-inch arms. I almost wonder if you're thinking, hey, we're going to let our pass rush kind of win us games. We're going to play zone, limit big plays, and we're going to trust that we get enough sacks to kind of stall out drives. I can see Pittsburgh maybe shifting in that direction, especially if they made this selection with Julius Brents, where you get this freak athlete, awesome size and arm length, and just let him play cover 3 or something like that. Opposite of Patrick Peterson, let those guys limit big plays, let them kind of play within their most comfortable spot. Brent's also a former Iowa player where they pretty much run exclusively zone, so he is comfortable in that spot. I would just wonder what that means, and would it be a change in what Pittsburgh has done versus years past. The Buccaneers draft Adetomiwa Adebawore. This would be some really awesome value. We've seen him sneak in the first round in plenty of mocks, and if not then, he goes high second round. So for him to just barely sneak it in the top 50, we saw Tampa go offensive tackle round 1. Now you get some defensive line reinforcements, whether it's interior defensive line or another edge rusher. I think Adebawore, can fit into the mix. And I mean, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is, I think, going to take a step forward in year 3, but Shaq Barrett, how much longer can he play? So I could see Adebawore and Tryon-Shoyinka being that 1-2 punch on the edge long-term for Tampa. Miami then drafts Steve Avila. I almost wonder if Cody Mock, if we're going to go into your offensive line, if I'd rather go there, or John Michael Schmitz, draft that center, Luke Weipler. If Blake Freeland, if they feel good about that tackle move, that could be a fun fit. So I think Avila is fine on the move, but I mostly think of him as a stationary and a good pass protector. To me, he's the best pass blocking interior offensive lineman in the class. His movement skills aren't the first thing that jump off the table for me or jump off the page for me. So I don't know how much of a perfect fit it is for Miami, but I could totally see them adding one more offensive lineman into the mix there at 51. Then the Eagles take Derek Hall at 52. Hey, I mean, they didn't just trade for a speed rusher and Robert Quinn, so why not draft one and have 4 years of control with Derek Hall here at 52? He plays a little stiff, very upright when he rushes the passer. But that being said, very explosive off the line of scrimmage, has some solid arm length, 6'3", 240, so maybe he can add a little bit of weight, but this guy's a pass rush specialist, and that's all he'd have to do in Philadelphia. I mean, they got such a deep edge rotation that I'd be shocked that Hall's on the field in non-pass rush situations or non-passing down spots. So, this would be a great spot for him to go, and he could basically just be Robert Quinn replacement after he made that move at the deadline. Then at 53, the Bears draft B.J. Ojulari. Yeah, I mean, another guy who's maybe a little light and maybe could have gone back to college, add some more strength to his build. But nevertheless, I mean, NFL ready from a move standpoint and how he uses his hands and how he stacks those moves. And he knows the position well enough. He can play chess with an offensive tackle across from him. Fast enough and explosive enough to beat a tackle to their outside shoulder, but has gained that inside counter to be able to go one-on-one and cut back to the inside and scream across the face of a tackle. So I think you're getting an NFL-ready pass rusher, long story short here. Sure, maybe not the biggest and the heaviest and strongest guy, but for the Bears who need answers on edge, I think Ojulari would be a good add. Then the Chargers, Brenton Strange, we're starting to see him pick up a ton of steam of late. He didn't have a whole lot of production, but when you watch him, you see a lot of things that you do like. And also, I think he's kind of aided by Zach Kuntz getting pushed up the board. Brenton Strange is the guy who won that job at Penn State. There's other factors there really that comes down to the coaching staff and who they think's better. But this is also the guy who was the backup to Pat Freiermuth, another guy that beat out Zach Kuntz there at Penn State. So, even without the production, like you see good athleticism when he does get the ball in his hands, solid after the catch, runs a variety of routes, can work the middle of the field, good hands. So I think there's a lot of pieces to work with, and I can totally see him being a guy who's better at the NFL level versus in college. And the Chargers, I do think, can stand to have an upgrade there at tight end. And then the Lions have Jalen Hyatt. Wow, so you have him and Jamison Williams as like these two absolute burners, deep downfield threats. I'll tell you one thing. It'll open up a ton of middle of the field, intermediate work for Amon-Ra St. Brown, who one of the best wide receivers in football, and not saying one of the best slot wide receiver in football. He's straight up one of the best wide receivers in football. He does not need help getting open and taking advantage of open space. But by adding Jalen Hyatt plus Jamison Williams in year 2, you're going to give him a lot of that. So I'm looking for more of a big body possession type. Honestly, the other Tennessee wide receiver, Cedric Tillman, was my favorite offensive fit for the Lions of any of the top 100 guys. So I prefer that almost. But Hyatt, that would certainly make for a fun offense. And then you see a recap there of what the Lions have done so far in this mock. Jags take Cam Smith. So, yeah, Smith falls a good bit down the board. I almost wonder here, DeJuan Jones, could he be in play as well? But Cam Smith, I'd prefer to see them draft an inside guy. But Darius Williams, 2 more years on his contract. Could Cam Smith and Tyson Campbell be that long-term outside corner duo? I think they could, but it does leave safety as well as the nickel spot a little vulnerable. Giants draft John Michael Schmitz. We've seen this exact player to team mock in the first round, so to get him at 57 would be awesome. I think he's really good on the move, good with those reach blocks, plays strong enough as well, just, despite being a little over 300 pounds. I think NFL ready, plug-and-play starter, 5 years of playing experience at college, 4 years as a starter. Yeah, I think this guy's ready to make a difference in the NFL level, and the Giants would certainly benefit from that. Cowboys and Jonathan Mingo. So, man, a 5th wide receiver on top of Jalen Tolbert, who was a day 2 pick last year. Michael Gallup making $10+ million a year. I think that figures at 12.5 ABY. And then Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. So I'd be interested to see how much of the field Jonathan Mingo sees. Does this open up the door to move on from Gallup, or are you already cutting ties with Jalen Tolbert? All very interesting. But I think this might be Mel saying, hey, I hear the hype on Jonathan Mingo, not only from other people in the media, but teams like him, and he's got the size, he's got the speed, used as a yak weapon at Ole Miss, but I think he shows that he can do more than that, be a deep downfield threat, but also solid in the intermediate parts of the field, cleaned up some of the maybe drop issues that he's had earlier on in his career. So yeah, I think this could be a guy who, another like Brenton Strange, maybe gets more production, is better at the NFL level, and he's been a hot name of late. So maybe this is Mel saying, hey, Cowboys, whatever about the team fit or whatever, but I want to talk about Mingo here in the second round because he's been a hot name. And then the Bills take Josh Downs. I mean, this could be Khalil Shakir, but maybe even a little better. Shakir, I know a lot of Bills fans are excited about him. I know Buffalo likes him as well. I just hope they do more with him underneath and as an intermediate threat versus just trying to take advantage of his speed and push him down the field. So hope Ken Dorsey's changing up his role a little bit. But also, Josh Downs has awesome yak ability. Go back to 2021. That dude was as hard to bring down as any wide receiver in the country. 4.48 may not sound crazy, but when you're 5'9", that's pretty good considering the shorter strides. 38-inch vertical. He has some sneaky contested catch ability too. So hopefully that can come into play if the Bills did make this pick here at 59. And look, they're going to be a good offense. It's not bad to add a fourth wide receiver into the mix. The Bengals add Zach Charbonnet. I'd love to see Charbonnet plus, Chris Evans as the 1-2 punch. I wonder what's going to happen with Joe Mixon in the Cincinnati Bengals. He has a very cuttable contract on top of some of the other stuff that's popped up this offseason. But yeah, focusing on Charbonnet here plus Chris Evans. That's an awesome 1-2 punch. Evans is a scat back, elusive type. And then Zach Charbonnet, who's this, big, tall, strong power back that, don't forget, he runs 4.53. He is not a slow. That's a combine time. That's not, that's not JSN at his pro day, right? So that's as legit as it gets. So don't just assume that he's this, slow power back. He's got a little bit of juice. He can plant his foot, and make that one initial cut. He's not going to bob, and he's not going to be elusive. He's not going to bring out the spin and the jukes and all that stuff, but trucking and stiff arm and leaning into his power. And that's why he kind of looked like, a Big Ten running back just playing at UCLA. He really does kind of fit with that archetype, but he is faster than I think a lot of people want to give him credit for. Bears take, Jaquelin Roy. Wow. It's probably been since, I don't know, last July since I saw Jaquelin Roy this high in a mock draft. I had a ton of preseason expectations and hype for him, especially once, Mason Smith goes down. He figured to be maybe one of the best interior defensive lineman in the 2024 class. I'm like, now Jaquelin Roy is going to get freed up. He's going to have all the big moments. He was good. Don't get me wrong. Good against the run, solid pass rusher, but he just didn't take games over, and there was nothing special about Jaquelin Roy. So do I think he can be added to that Bears interior defensive line and be adequate, be solid, be an average starter? Absolutely. But I don't think he's the guy that I once had as like a top 3 interior defensive line guy, right up there with Jalen Carter and right up there with Brian Brzee. So I think you can probably wait till round 3, maybe even round 4 to get this guy, because didn't even have a great combine either. So with the athletic limitations, I think he might end up being someone who's just kind of a early downs run game specialist at the NFL level. Eagles then add Jartavius Martin, the DB from Illinois. I'm really excited to talk about him in this upcoming mock this weekend, but nickel corner, maybe some other safety flexibility in there, maybe because he's a really crazy athlete. Maybe he could play some free safety. I wonder if that transition is potentially in his future. But for the Eagles, add him into that nickel rotation with Avonte Maddox, and also a guy who tackles pretty well and can fly the ball. Really, this guy, change of direction and explosiveness, that's his game. So find ball carrier, get to ball carrier. So I almost wonder maybe even strong safety, despite being sub 6 foot, sub 200 pounds, not the biggest guy, not like JL Skinner, who you look at and you're like, that guy's a box safety. Martin doesn't really come with that, but again, with his explosive first step, ability to go find the ball carrier and go get him and then change of directions, plant his foot, cut back the other way, there's a lot to like there. But I can see this both being an Avonte Maddox long-term type of replacement, or a guy maybe you do play in the line of scrimmage and let him be kind of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and just kind of read the quarterback's eyes, go fly to the ball carrier, and make some plays for us. And then at 63, last pick, we'll talk about Marvin Mims to the Kansas City Chiefs. This would be fun. 4.38 speed, inside-out versatility, ton of college production. I can see where Andy Reid's like, yeah, are you going to give me another weapon? Sure. And this offense in Kansas City has kind of become yak focused. So, Marvin Mims on top of what you already have with Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, they're all kind of smaller, slighter built guys, but also come with a ton of yak upside. So if that's going to continue being the MO in Kansas City, he does make for a really fun fit. But guys, that is going to do it for my reaction to Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest 2023 mock, and a 2-round mock draft at that. So, man, I thought this was really fun. Some cool fits and some fun ideas. I'll give Mel let's go with an 89. I think this was a solid mock. A couple things I'd change, a couple guys who I'd move up, and some names I'd move down. But nonetheless, I think this was a solid mock and created some fun conversations to have. So let me hear your thoughts. What would you grade this mock? A, B, C, D, F, or 0 to 100? Let me hear your grade down below. And of course, who's your favorite team? And did you like the pick that Mel gave your squad? Also, what are maybe some of your favorite player to team landing spots we saw in this mock draft? Let me hear your thoughts and reflections on this mock draft down below in the comments section. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did, and subscribe if you are new to the channel looking for more draft coverage as we get closer to the first round of the NFL draft, as well as just more football content in your life in general. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.